Chapter 77. Listen and repeat. Conversation. Did he save any money? No, he didn't. Therefore, he can't go on holiday, can he? No, he can't. What could he do if he'd save some money? If he'd save some money, he could go on holiday. Did she study shorthand? No, she didn't. Therefore, she can't get a better job, can she? No, she can't. What could she get if she'd studied shorthand? If she'd studied shorthand, she could get a better job. You didn't register early, did you? No, I didn't. Therefore, you haven't got a good timetable, have you? No, I haven't. What would you have if you'd registered early? If I'd registered early, I'd have a better timetable. Did he study that unit? No, he didn't. Therefore, he isn't able to solve the problem, is he? No, he isn't. What would he be able to do if he'd studied that unit? If he'd studied that unit, he'd be able to solve the problem. He saw the doctor, didn't he? Yes, he did. Therefore, he isn't ill, is he? No, he isn't. How would he be if he hadn't seen the doctor? If he hadn't seen the doctor, he'd be ill. Did they listen to the lecture? No, they didn't. Therefore, they don't understand what the teacher is saying now, do they? No, they don't. What would they understand if they'd listened to the lecture? If they'd listened to the lecture, they'd understand what the teacher is saying now. Did he study very hard? No, he didn't. Therefore, he's failing the course, isn't he? Yes, he is. How would he be doing if he'd studied harder? If he'd studied harder, he wouldn't be failing the course. Did he arrive on time? No, he didn't. Therefore, he isn't sitting at his desk, is he? No, he isn't. If he'd arrived on time, where would he be sitting? If he'd arrived on time, he'd be sitting at his desk now. Vocabulary. As long as, at the very least, authorization, confidential, adjective, customary, adjective, document, noun, in writing, kindly, adverb, lecture, noun, office manager, requirement, noun, responsibility, timetable, truth, noun, whatever, interrogative pronouns. Verbs. To be, back, to be, one's responsibility, to be sure, of plus noun/ing form, that, to be sure, to plus infinitive, to enter, to hurry, to interfere, to knock, to poke around, to register, to tell the truth, to upset, upset, upset. Insights. Lecture. This noun refers to a specific kind of lesson, namely a university-level lecture or talk. It must be distinguished from a. Lesson, meaning private lesson. b. Class, meaning lesson as part of a textbook. c. Period, meaning hour or period of teaching for a group of students in a subject. To be sure to/that. This expression means to make sure, to not fail to take care to, when used in imperative or duty-related contexts. Example, be sure to lock the door. To interfere. This verb can have several constructions. A. It can be used alone, meaning to interfere, to meddle. B. Followed by with means to interfere or meddle in something when the subject is a person, or to hinder, obstruct, when the subject is an inanimate thing. C. Followed by in means to intervene, to take part in something. Dialogue. Mary Brown is interrupted at work by a man she has never seen before. Mary. It's customary to knock before you enter someone's office. Man. I just want to look at your office. Mary. Have a look at my office. Whatever for? Man. We're checking space requirements for the department. Mary. Do you have any sort of authorization? Man. What do you mean? The office manager told me to look around. Mary. Of course that's what you say, but how do I know that you're telling the truth? Man. Well, what do you want? Mary. At the very least, I'd like to see some sort of authorization in writing. Man. There's nothing for you to get upset about. Mary. Thank you, but I'll decide that. This office is full of confidential documents. I can't let someone I've never seen before just come in and start poking around through my things. Man. I thought they were the government's things. Mary. As long as they're in this office, they're my responsibility. And now, if you'll excuse me, you're interfering with my work. Man. I'll be back later. Mary. Just be sure you have written authorization. Man. I'll be very sure. Note: in the expression, poking around through my things, the preposition through means among. The whole phrase can be translated as to rummage among my things. If you'll excuse me is a polite phrase equivalent to se vuole scusarmi ora. The will form here expresses politeness, not future time. Just be sure you have written authorization means be sure not to fail to present written authorization. Grammar. Present conditional. Progressive form. If I were at home, I'd certainly be working. If Sally had gone to the party, she'd be dancing now. If they had arrived on time, they'd be listening to the concert now. It is already known that in English, all verb tenses can have a simple form and a progressive form. The latter is used to indicate ongoing actions whose time limits are not specified. The present conditional also allows this form. It is made up of would/should plus be plus ing form of the main verb. Conditional sentences. If clause, past action. Main clause, present action. If I had studied accounting, I'd have a better job. If it had snowed, we could go skiing. If you had traveled as much as he has, you might be tired of traveling. If Albert had caught a cold, he'd be sneezing now. This structure represents a special case of the third conditional. In this type, the hypothesis expressed in the if clause refers to a past situation that is already impossible condition, because events happened differently. The result, however, expressed in the main clause, refers to the present. Example: if I had studied accounting, I'd have a better job, implies, but I didn't study accounting, so I don't have a better job now. The meaning of this conditional type explains the time relationship between the clauses. In the if clause, the past perfect is used, while in the main clause, the present conditional appears, either in the simple or progressive form.